Next on Currents News, young pilgrims from Brooklyn and Queens and the Pope are in Panama tonight. World Youth Day is now in high gear. A highlight of the Pope's visit, he will dedicate the magnificent Cathedral in Panama City. We'll have a look inside the church. The showdown in Washington takes a sharp turn. Speaker Nancy Pelosi wants to block President Trump from giving his State of the Union speech. Plus, a vigil for life at St. Patrick's Cathedral on the same day New York's governor signed a new law that eliminates current restrictions on late-term abortions. The news starts right now. Pope Francis is in Panama at this hour to lead the youth of the world in a celebration of the Catholic faith. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. Pope Francis landed in Panama late this afternoon. The Latin American pontiff will lead the first World Youth Day ever staged in Central America. The Pope started his journey at 10 this morning, Rome time. This is his third World Youth Day. The main program gets underway tomorrow, and Currents News is providing special live coverage. But right now, Currents News' Tim Harfman is at the PHILLIP Convention Center in Panama. He traveled to the country with the pilgrims from the Brooklyn Diocese. Tim.
Liz, we're at a special event hosted by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops for thousands of pilgrims, including the nearly 200 who traveled here from the Brooklyn Diocese. Today is the first full day that pilgrims from Brooklyn and Queens are all here together in Panama. I had the chance to travel with some of them, and we were up early heading here to World Youth Day. Not your typical scene at New York's JFK Airport, but before sunrise, the terminal is fairly quiet. The young people are waiting to board their plane for the week-long celebration that's ahead.
I feel excited. I'm really tired, but I'm really excited to just experience a new country.
Young Catholics like this group from St. Bartholomew Church in East Elmhurst, Queens, are packed up and ready to go.
It was really complicated, knowing what to bring, and because it's a new experience, but we tried our best and we have it here now.
They're on their way to join hundreds of thousands of other young Catholics at the international gathering, Pope Francis leading the festivities, including Stations of the Cross Friday, praying in front of the Blessed Sacrament at Saturday's vigil, and celebrating Sunday's closing Mass. But even with so much to see and do at World Youth Day, Pilgrim Carlos Cajamarca is focused on his education.
I actually brought homework to do for my physics class and AP classes, which is really tough, but I think this trip, there's still going to be time to do my homework, and I'll still be able to enjoy Panama and increase my religious experience.
And have an experience at World Youth Day he'll never forget.
I've heard many stories about going to these places, and people always come back with miracle stories or how it's changed them. So hopefully that can happen to me too, and I can pray for my family and friends that really need it.
And after landing, the young Catholics from Brooklyn and Queens got right into the World Youth Day festivities, boarding buses, dropping off their luggage, and going straight to the opening Mass. They say that being in Panama is not a vacation, but a pilgrimage, and that includes having a better understanding of church teachings. USA! Pilgrims from Brooklyn and Queens start their days walking long distances.
New York, USA!
But they're excited to strengthen their faith.
I think it's important to give us an early start to bring our bond closer to God, give us that morning refresher that we're still here all together.
They travel to catechesis to listen and boost their Catholic faith.
I think oftentimes after our religious ed ends, the formal training for our faith sometimes dwindles. I think this is a great opportunity to kind of revitalize our knowledge.
Joining hundreds of pilgrims from around the world in Panama, they gather in prayer and song. Australian Archbishop Christopher Prowse leading catechesis, encouraging young people to hear God's call as the Blessed Mother did.
My message is for people to say yes and to, just like Mary, to say to God, here I am, no matter what situation they find themselves, and that God is with them in their struggles, and like Mary, will be with us all the days of our life.
The question and answer portion also helping pilgrims to re-energize their faith.
Someone asked a question that was, how do you know if it's God's will or if it's your own desire talking to you? So it's really cool.
What was the answer?
It was that God doesn't shout, he whispers to you, and you just, things that are your desire don't last as long as God's will, which lasts forever.
There are a number of catechesis sessions taking place simultaneously throughout Panama. The Bishop of Brooklyn, Nicholas DiMarzio, and Auxiliary Bishop Octavio Cisneros are also leading catechesis sessions in both English and Spanish. The pilgrims from Brooklyn and Queens look forward to hearing from their bishops. Liz?
Tim, we are watching a lot and seeing some singing and some cheering. We're even seeing some tears. What is the atmosphere like?
Yeah, well, it's really exciting, Liz, and we haven't even started the events with the hundreds of thousands of pilgrims led by Pope Francis. You'll see groups from all over the world waving flags through the streets of Panama, and even though there may be a language barrier, there's always a handshake and a smile. Liz?
All right, Tim, thank you very much. Bishop Frank CAGGIANO is a prominent catechist who will be speaking to English language pilgrims in Panama. The leader of the Bridgeport, Connecticut Diocese and a Brooklyn native says he won't shy away from the clergy sex abuse crisis, but he won't dwell on it. He says he'll give the young Catholics a choice between the dawn and dusk, inviting them to stand in the dawn with a personal commitment to holiness. On the agenda for World Youth Day is daily confessions in various languages as part of an initiative called Forgiveness Park. From 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., pilgrims can make an examination of conscience, followed by adoration at a nearby chapel. Young people from all over the world gathered in Panama tell us why they chose to go to confession.
I am from Colombia. My native language is Spanish. This was the first time I confessed in English. Breaking the language barriers, the cultural barriers. My confessor was from Australia. So it was, crazy. Like, it really makes me feel that we are all one church.
It's amazing to see people from all over the world going to confession here at the same time. And even though there's so much going on, it's still so peaceful when you're just sitting there one-on-one with the priest.
The Holy Father himself may hear confessions, as he's done at other World Youth Days. While on the flight to Panama, Pope Francis confirmed he has more travel plans. Speaking to reporters on his plane, he said he'll be visiting Japan in November. He also mentioned that he would like to visit Iraq, but is still discussing the security situation. The pontiff is scheduled to travel to United Arab Emirates, Morocco, and Bulgaria in the first half of this year. Currents News will provide live coverage of World Youth Day from Panama beginning tomorrow. National correspondent for The Tablet and Crux, Christopher White, is on the ground filing exclusive reports. Plus, we'll speak to Crux Rome Bureau Chief Inez San Martin, who flew to Panama with the Pope on board his plane. And, of course, Tim Harfman will keep us up to date on the latest from the event. Coverage begins tomorrow morning at 9:45 a.m. New York State has a new abortion law that eliminates current restrictions on late-term abortions despite vigorous opposition from the Catholic Church. Late yesterday, the state Senate approved the Reproductive Health Act 38-24. The Assembly voted yes earlier. Governor Andrew Cuomo signed the measure last night. All Republicans in the Senate opposed the measure and were joined by only 2 Democrats, Simcha Felder of Brooklyn and Joe Adabo of Queens. The director of pro-life activities for the New York State Catholic Conference, Kathleen Gallagher, spoke to us earlier today about the implications of this new law.
It's just politics, and it's so sad because not only are we going to lose unborn human life, but women are going to be harmed by this. Many women who suffer pain and heartache for years after their abortion, they're going to be harmed. It also allows more late-term abortions. Previously, our law had banned abortion after 24 weeks of pregnancy unless a mother's life was in danger. this new law allows abortions after 24 weeks of pregnancy for virtually any reason.
Many outraged voters across the state are echoing Kathy Gallagher over what the new act does to the state's abortion laws. Hundreds of those people gathered at a prayer vigil for life at St. Patrick's Cathedral Tuesday night, the 46th anniversary of Roe v. Wade. Currents News' Emily Drewby was there and she has the story.
To address the sad events in Albany today.
On Tuesday night, heartbroken parishioners gathered at St. Patrick's Cathedral for a prayer vigil and Mass for Life.
To pray for an end to abortion.
At the same time, in Albany, Governor Andrew Cuomo was signing the Reproductive Health Act into law.
Congratulations, the bill is signed.
The bill, passed in the Democrat-led state Senate on the 46th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, ends most restrictions on abortion. Those attending Tuesday's vigil and Mass concerned about what the new legislation will mean.
Angry and disappointed in people who talk out of both sides of their mouths.
The bill strips abortion from the state's criminal code, expands who can perform the procedure, and makes it legal to perform abortions even during the third trimester in some cases.
This is a hard night to say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
The Sisters of Life, whose missions include supporting pregnant women and helping women heal after abortion, and the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal, attended the prayer vigil and Mass for Life. Sister Virginia Joy says while she's saddened by the new law, she's also encouraged by the vigil's big turnout.
It helps us realize that not everybody in New York is as hostile to life as the legislatures and the governor wants us to believe, and that this is the only appropriate response is prayer, to come before the Lord begging mercy.
A sentiment attendees echoed.
It's good to see that this many people are out for the Mass tonight and that they have different feelings, and hopefully we can change the culture.
The new legislation goes beyond the Supreme Court's Roe v. Wade decision and makes abortion permanent in New York state law. Many believe the Roe ruling could eventually be overturned because of a now conservative-leaning Supreme Court and a president who is openly anti-abortion. In Midtown Manhattan, Emily Drewby, Currents News.
There's a new study tonight that finds most U.S. bishops would ordain women as deacons if the Vatican gives the okay. The report, issued Tuesday by Georgetown University, was conducted last fall after Pope Francis set up a commission to study the history of whether there were women deacons in the early church. There's a lot more news headed your way. There's been an arrest made in a shocking case after a vulnerable woman was abused in a healthcare facility. Covington Catholic High School has reopened its doors, but with heavy security. I'll speak to the Catholic League's Bill Donahue about the controversy. Plus, more of our special coverage of World Youth Day 2019, the story of a teen who is serving the Lord in a special way this weekend. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. A new clash involving the showdown over the government shutdown. Speaker Nancy Pelosi wants to keep President Trump from giving his State of the Union address. Now, at the same time, the Senate is trying to ram through legislation that would end the stalemate. Karen Kafa has the latest from Washington.
While federal workers protested inside a Senate office building, party leaders set the stage for Thursday's dueling votes.
It's hard to think of a good reason to oppose this.
Our amendment: open up the government and then let's talk.
The Democratic proposal: reopen the federal government until February 8th while both sides negotiate. The GOP proposal: the president's proposal, 3 years of DACA protections in exchange for $5.7 billion for the border wall, a non-starter for Democrats.
The president will just say, oh, hey, it worked great to shut down the government to get the first thing I wanted. I'm going to keep shutting down the government in the future.
Both on track to fail, but senators hope it's a constructive step.
Hopefully, once that occurs and all sides have laid out their position, we can then begin using this as a catalyst to take the next steps.
Minus a deal, Speaker Nancy Pelosi and House Democratic leadership want next Tuesday's State of the Union address at the Capitol postponed.
Unless the government is reopened, it's highly unlikely that the State of the Union is going to take place on the floor of the United States House of Representatives.
Pelosi sent a letter to the president Wednesday afternoon reiterating no shutdown solution, no speech. His response:
I'm not surprised.
It's really a shame what's happening with the Democrats. They've become radicalized.
The House has to vote to authorize the president's address in the chamber. In Washington, Karen Kafa, Currents News.
A nurse in Arizona is behind bars tonight after police arrested him on suspicion of impregnating a woman who was in a vegetative state for years. 36-year-old Nathan Sutherland is a licensed practical nurse who was caring for the woman at Hacienda Healthcare Facility. He has been arrested on preliminary charges of sexual assault and vulnerable adult abuse. A court ordered Sutherland to provide a DNA sample to investigators, which crime lab technicians matched to the DNA of the baby. A developing story out of Florida. Authorities in Sebring say multiple people were shot this afternoon after a man opened fire inside a SunTrust bank. Details are not yet available on the conditions of the injured. According to police, after a SWAT team entered the bank, the suspects surrendered. The latest now on the rush to judge students at Covington Catholic High School. The teens were back in class today under tight security after the building shut down yesterday. A furor erupted when video surfaced of their interaction with a Native American elder following Washington's March for Life on Friday. At the school, the father of a graduate arrived with a rosary to express his concern.
Just saying prayers for healing for our country, end the divisiveness, and to pray for the children that go to school here.
The heightened security at Covington follows repeated threats against the students and their schools. Some are set to meet President Trump when the government shutdown ends. Catholic League President Bill Donahue is the leader of the nation's largest Catholic civil rights organization. He joins us now to discuss the Covington controversy. Bill, always a pleasure. You know, you have defended the teenagers of Covington, and in doing so, you turned your fire against their critics, especially some Catholic clergy. What's troubled you the most?
You know, it's amazing that the Diocese of Covington would sell out the Catholic kids. They wouldn't even defend them on the high altar of sensitivity to Native Americans. Surely we should have sensitivity to every ethnic and minority group in the country. But the facts belie their statement. Now I understand they're under a lot of fire by the alumni and the students and the parents, as they should be. They didn't ask for a third-party investigation on Friday. They just condemned them, and that was their word. On Sunday, they said we need a third-party investigation. About what? Didn't they see the second video? It goes on for 2 hours. The white Catholic boys did nothing wrong, and not one person has been able to come up with anything that the Catholic kids said or did that would rise to the level of bigotry. Nothing.
In taking a look at all the video, Bill, and we did see that there were racial slurs being hurled at these young men and everyone, most everyone within that group of people. I want to talk to you more about the young man who stood face to face with Native American elder Nathan Phillips. Could he not have handled the situation better, or should we ask that question of Mr. Phillips as well?
I think the kid could not have handled it better. I even disagree with him. He said they should have walked away. But one of the male chaperones could have intervened and said, why don't we just knock this off? Why they didn't, I don't know. The kid did nothing. He never said a word. He didn't take the bait. It was the activist who was banging the drum in the kid's face, who was waiting for the kid to take the bait and say something obscene. And he didn't. I will say, in fairness, that there have been some who, upon looking at the second video, have walked it back. And they realized that the video does not sustain any culpability on the part of the kids. I'm waiting now for the Diocese of Covington to finally come to the conclusion that most everybody else has come to.
All right, Bill, as always, you bring some great, powerful perspective to these issues. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
More now on our special coverage of World Youth Day. The theme is from Luke's Gospel. I am the servant of the Lord. May it be done to me according to your word. One teenager from the Diocese of Brooklyn traveled to Panama to serve in a special way in front of thousands of other pilgrims. Currents News' Tim Harfman filed this report before he left for Panama.
I just randomly received an email.
19-year-old Vivian Argadi and her church's youth minister, Angelica Taveras, were preparing to attend World Youth Day in Panama when they received the news.
She's like, Angelica, I got this random email. Like, let me see what it is.
It was from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. Vivian was selected to be a candle bearer at an adoration prayer service for U.S. pilgrims. Vivian, a sophomore at Hofstra University and a parishioner at Our Lady of Lourdes Church in Queens Village, couldn't believe her eyes.
At first I was like not sure. I was like, what is this? But then I obviously got more information about it and started reading more into it. And yeah, I was like, of course I'll do it.
Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you.
Nearly 8,000 teenagers and young adults will attend the day-long event featuring music, prayer, and fellowship.
My one defense, my righteousness.
Cardinal Sean O'Malley of Boston will be presiding over the service.
I think she's perfect for it. The moment I knew she was chosen, I was like, oh, this is great. I think for her faith was very important. You know, she would continue to grow in her faith.
Vivian's pastor, Father Patrick Longalong, says it's an encounter she'll never forget.
I hope that the experience may inspire her to see the church as a whole, and that she can encourage other people to be able to reach out and understand that the church community is a very big community.
And this will be her first World Youth Day.
I know I'll definitely cherish the moment because I'll be in presence of God even more to be part of the adoration.
In Queens Village, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
Still to come on Currents News, an inside look at the magnificent cathedral Pope Francis will dedicate during his stay in Panama. We'll be right back. A major highlight of the Pope's journey to Panama for World Youth Day will be his visit to the Cathedral Basilica of Santa Maria la Antigua. It's been under construction, now almost complete. Panama City is anxiously awaiting the final touches from the Holy Father. Currents News' Emily Druby reports.
Following 3 years of restoration, the first mainland cathedral on the American continent has reopened. Now the Basilica Cathedral of Santa Maria la Antigua will welcome a very special guest, Pope Francis.
The Vicar of Christ on earth, the Pope, is going to leave us as a gift the consecration of this temple that is so important for Panama and for the entire American continent. It is not usual today to build many cathedrals. Quite the contrary, this one has been totally remodeled, and that is why it is going to be consecrated.
Both termites and the effects of the climate, like humidity and rain, have caused this cathedral to deteriorate.
With UNESCO's designation as World Heritage Site in 1997, work began to restore the cathedral and other churches. With the passage of time and taking into account the important World Youth Day event, the Panamanian government has allocated $12 million for the reconstruction of the walls, facades, and the Committee of Friends of the Old Town is responsible for the furniture and decoration of the church.
It was also abandoned after the Panamanian government's confiscation of church property in the 19th century. Since 2015, the altarpiece, the walls, and the floors have been cleaned and restored. The cathedral has been under continuous construction since 1688.
It's due to lack of economic resources. The Panamanian government has always been poor in this aspect, but has lived the authenticity of the gospel. This church does not have great architectural treasures. It only has the building, which is beautiful, simple, elegant, and does not even have altars around it.
The cathedral is located in the Old Town, which also has a colonial style. Emily Druby, Currents News.
That is Currents News. I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you so much for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Please join us tomorrow morning at 9:45 for special live coverage from Panama of World Youth Day. I hope to see you again next time.